Our last Lent live conversations online. We've been journeying throughout Lent, having a think about different topics of the Christian faith, different ways that we can engage with God, different things that our faith in Jesus calls us to. We've thought about prayer, reading the Bible, we've thought about the Holy Spirit, we've thought about communion, all different wonderful things. And tonight, I'm really, really excited for our last one because we've got the wonderful Phil Arnold from Christchurch Armley. He's our wonderful, wonderful parish neighbour. We do lots of stuff together, don't we, Phil?
We do indeed. We do
morning prayer. We've done some youth group together. And most importantly, and something I'm really excited about returning, we often play cricket together.
We do. And we're looking forward to that this summer again.
Should be great. I'm really enjoying watching all the cricket grounds around us being mown for the first time for the year. The wickets are getting cut ready for a fantastic season. But this evening, we are not here just to talk about the cricket, which is a shame, but instead we are here to talk about sharing the gospel, sharing our faith, talking to others about Jesus. And so this evening, Phil and I are going to have a bit of a chat like we have done in the last few weeks about sharing faith, and you can pop your questions in the comments. If you've got any questions, if you've got any thoughts, if you want to kind of offer your own opinions, your own thoughts, your own reflections, maybe you've got an answer to one of the questions that I'm asking Phil, and why not say just a quick hi in the comments. Good evening, Janice. Wonderful to have you with us and others as well. Do say hi as you're watching, and then we know you. Phil, this evening, I thought we'd start by reading a little bit of the Bible, Matthew 28, right at the end of Matthew. And we'll have a bit of a chat about it, and then we'll see where we go. So this is Matthew 28 from verse 16 onwards. It says, "Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, to the very end of the age.'" That's a pretty well-known passage on kind of evangelism and sharing the gospel and sharing faith. Do you have any thoughts, reflections? What stands out to you on that passage, Phil?
Well, it is well known, and I've sort of come back to it over at different times over the years, and each time I read it, I see something slightly different. This week, as I was reading that, I knew we were going to have a little bit of a chat about it. It really struck me that what Jesus was asking the disciples to do was exactly what he'd done with them for the previous 3 years.
Yeah,
and it feels to me as though sometimes we make it this complicated thing, or we worry about it. Really what Jesus was saying was, now you go out and you do what I've done with you. In other words, share your life with people that you encounter, offer people encouragement, offer them prayer for healing, spend time with them, entering into their worlds, their hopes and fears, get alongside them. And I guess that's what jumped out at me this time, and that idea of giving them authority, recognizing that Jesus is not going to be around, that he wouldn't be doing it with them, but they had the authority to actually go and continue on. So I really struck me this week that that his call really to them is just to continue.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What's been going on.
And almost it's exactly the same, because he says at the end, I am with you always. Jesus was with them as they were doing it. You know, you've got the stories of the sending out of the 72, like an experimental mission trip. He sends out them 2 by 2 to have a little go at evangelism, to have a little go at sharing the good news. They go into the towns and the villages, they cast out demons, they pray for healing, they see some incredible things happen, then they come back to share their stories, don't they? And he's like, they come back going, in your name, like these amazing things happened, and Jesus going, great, now do it again. Give it another go, see what happens. It was good, wasn't it? And I'll be with you again next time as well. Maybe not in flesh, but and as we kind of get to in about 53 days time, Pentecost, the Spirit descending, we've got authority and Jesus is with us. We've got his authority because he's with us. It's absolutely incredible. It's just a continuation of what Jesus is doing. It's nothing new, which is quite encouraging, isn't it?
I think it is. And I think that that idea of, I mean, Jesus spent a lot of his ministry out and about. And I think that, as church leaders, we rightly have a sense, as a church leader myself, I should say, we have a sense of wanting to draw people into church, whereas Jesus' emphasis quite often was actually being out there. And I suppose for our churches today and our congregations, the people who are out and about a lot are actually members of the church, and they're out there living in their communities and sharing life with people. And I think that ultimately that's where the real emphasis is here of everybody in the church community, in the Christian community, simply living their lives in a way that honors God and shares Jesus with people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like a dynamic of kind of gathering in for encouragement, for teaching, for training, for prayer, for worship, to be built up together. But then, like, you have to, like the banana boat or the pirate ship at the amusement park, you swing the other way and you go out into the world and you see what God's going to do, and you take that faith that's been built up and you kind of put it to the test almost, and then you come back and you share stories and encouragements and learn and draw in the people who you've met there. A wonderful dynamic of kind of gather and out and in and share and kind of it's wonderful. So thinking about one of the phrases, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. This is Jesus speaking, not me speaking. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to Jesus. How do you think that shapes the way we think about sharing the gospel?
It's a really interesting question. I think, I suppose often when we go out there, when we say we're trying to share our faith with people, I think we worry sometimes and we wonder, have we got the right to do it? Have we got sort of, is it right for us to actually go out and share our faith with others? And in one sense, what's being said here, I think, is, this is about your story, but it's actually God's story. And sharing God's story is, of course, that's what we're called to do. We are called to go out and give, good news and share that sense of liberation and hope and new life with people. And I think the authority comes from a sense of wanting the best for others, but also recognizing that we're sharing God's story. And so we can be relaxed. We should be relaxed about that and not feel sort of too worried about imposing ourselves, because actually we're really just sharing God's story with those whom we meet and encounter.
And almost kind of help people find their place in God's story, rather than a whole bunch of kind of mental propositions to assent to, like believe these 4 or 5 true things that you didn't believe before, and kind of that's kind of becoming a Christian. Rather, it's realizing that actually the way that we were created, the way that everything in us is supposed to be, fits in God's larger story, that we have a part in the meta-narrative of the universe, almost, that there's something expansive to it rather than reductive.
I think that's right. And I think when we have that sense of being a part of a bigger story, I think we all, human beings generally, want to be part of a bigger story. I don't think that's unique to me or to Chris. I think actually we all want to have a sense of, there's meaning out there. And to me, that is sort of inviting people to share that, to paint on a bigger canvas, if you like. I think it's a really good way of looking at it.
That's a really nice phrase, inviting people to paint on a bigger canvas. That's a really lovely phrase, Phil. I really like that. God is the ultimate artist, but we get to kind of have a flick of some paint too. Oh, that's really nice. That's really lovely. I wonder if you've got any questions for Phil, do pop them in the comments. I can see them dropping in. Good evening, Joyce and Denise and Audrey as well. Thanks for joining. So then if we move on to the next bit in this little passage, Jesus says, "Go therefore and make disciples." What do you think the difference between making converts and making disciples is?
Well, I guess there's making disciples feels to me like a slightly more long-term life kind of story. I think the other issue with that sort of the language around making disciples is that ultimately that's really between God and the people that he's encountering, and in a sense we're there, but it's not really for us to make disciples. That's sort of something that happens between a person and God. I guess the discipleship part is where we can come into it in a really proactive way. I guess I tend to think more and more of discipleship as walking alongside people, and not sort of dropping in and out of their lives just at one point and sort of trying to present them with a propositional idea and them accepting it and then who knows what. To me, discipleship and making disciples is about enabling someone to grow spiritually and, to be honest, as a human being. And so for me, it has much more of a kind of a long-term way of looking at it. I quite like the story of the road to Emmaus, and the two are walking along and Jesus comes and walks along beside them, and they don't actually know who Jesus is. And they just pouring out their hearts to Jesus about what's happened. And it's not until after they've broken bread and he's gone that they realize who he is. And that walking alongside, to me, that is sort of the essence of discipleship. Where I am here in Upper Armley, I guess we have contact with a lot of people whose lives are quite difficult, who've had quite challenging lives. And so walking alongside them really means really quite different things to someone, say, who had my upbringing, which was relatively stable. Sometimes it's about doing very practical things. We've just had warm welcome this afternoon, where we have lots of different people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And because it was Easter, we just watched an episode of The Chosen, which is a program about following the stories of Jesus. And for us, that was the most appropriate way to share Easter with them, just to watch a film, because it was sort of accessible. And I suppose that's just one example of just working out, okay, what's going to work with this group of people or with these people? And to me, it's about journeying alongside people in a way that is hopefully modeling what you're doing as well. And also just having that patient attentiveness to that person and helping them to learn about what it is to walk with Jesus.
Yeah, it's less of a kind of a one and done moment, but more kind of a paralleling of our lives to Jesus almost.
That's a lovely way. That's a great way of putting it, Chris. Yeah.
I've kind of got some maths concepts in my head. You've got like the tangent of a curve where this line kind of touches a curve just once, but kind of maybe that's what we think when it is to become a Christian. There's like this one moment where our life and God's life meets, but instead we slowly learn how to parallel our lives to Jesus, so that we are going in the same direction alongside him. That's really wonderful. Thank you, Phil. And so who helped you take steps in your faith then? Who almost shared their faith with you?
Well, I'm one of those people who kind of grew up in the church. So my dad was a vicar, and I've always been to church. In that sense, I didn't have that sort of really the dramatic conversion story from going in one direction and everything reversing. But along the way, there was really key people who had an impact on my life. My parents obviously were two people who did. They, in their own way, not perfectly, but they sought to live out their faith and did some things that were quite showed real obedience to God and real stepping out. I went to boarding school when I was 7, quite a young age to go to boarding school. It was an unusual boarding school in Pakistan. And I had some people there who were very influential on me. We had a house parent system, and my house parent was a lady called Eunice Hill, and she was a Canadian woman full of joy and full of sort of the Holy Spirit. And I suppose I just thought, wow, being a Christian is a really positive thing, being around her. And then I guess when I was a teenager, there was a number of people who had an impact on me. One was a chaplain, a guy called Richard Jones, who was a big Kiwi former rugby player. He played for Canterbury or Canterbury University, one of the two. Big, it's a very good rugby player. He was kind of a really, to me, then he'd gone and had a really difficult time and come back from it and done all sorts. But he was someone who who could walk alongside you because he was able to relate well. And then I suppose there's just been a series of different people in my faith journey, in my 20s and 30s and 40s. I'm 51 now, so and that continues. There continue to be people who sort of in different ways come alongside me. I guess some of that's reversed a little bit now, in that part of my role is to come alongside other people. So, but I don't think you ever leave. I don't think, certainly in my case, I'm never going to get to a point where I'm not still learning and growing because of people who are impacting on me in an ongoing kind of way.
Yeah. The almost sharing of faith isn't just kind of to those who don't know Jesus yet, but there's a sense that we encourage one another. We each have a different relationship with God, and so a part of our relationship can be shared almost, that we can share some of the beauty, some of the joy, some of the riches, some of the treasure that we found in God with those who are also kind of already journeying along with God. That's why small groups are so good, because you can build that relationship and you journey together with Jesus as a little community of people, kind of encouraging one another, sharing faith with one another, when people are finding life tough, sharing that faith and that encouragement then can be so powerful as well. And it's an attractive thing to invite people into, perhaps who are exploring faith, who are new to faith, who are interested in faith, that you're not kind of just this one person on your own, but there's others who care for you and want to see the best for you and will support you and look after you. What fears or barriers do you feel when it comes to sharing your faith?
Well, I maybe I'm a little bit less fearful than either I used to be, or perhaps than perhaps some others. I guess there's always that sense of not wanting to offend people. That's certainly something that I'm not in the business of wanting to go out and wind people up or make people dislike me. So I guess that's always in the back of my mind. I suppose more and more that I spend with people, it's often, I think, if it's done with love and with a sense of sort of patience and the right intention, and in a sense sort of wanting to hear other people's stories, I'm less fearful than perhaps I have been in the past. And I think that just trying to live life and speak about what God is doing in your life seems easier. I've always felt uncomfortable with sort of trying to summarize the Christian message in a minute and get it in there, and hopefully something will happen, because I don't know that works that well anymore, that approach. I'm sure it can work. I recognize that it can work, but I think that for most people, they want to hear a bit about your story, and they want to see how faith has impacted on your life or my life. And also they want to hear a bit about your failures and the things that you struggle with. So when it's sort of pitched in that way, I feel less fearful. I feel more apprehensive when I'm sort of, or in the past, particularly, I was trying to sort of, summarize the message in 3 key points. And it always felt a bit forced to me.
Yeah.
Whereas
it's almost like those 3 key points are like, is it true? What are the facts of this? And almost culturally, we move from an is it true to does it work?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does this faith thing work? Does this God thing actually do what it says on the tin? Great, Jesus promises us life everlasting in the future, but my life now is really hard and I'm suffering and I'm struggling. Like, does it work now? Because now is kind of the thing that's right in front of me. And so being able to say, look, when I found life really hard, I found prayer to be the most important thing, or I reached rock bottom and I found that God was there and he has been in the pit with me and he's walked with me out of it. Or when we're feeling, it's not just when life is hard either, when we're feeling tremendous joy, isn't it strange that like we want to sing and shout and give thanks, but who do we give thanks to? God is the source of all blessing. You can live for someone more than yourself.
Absolutely. I think that it's joining that bigger story again, isn't it? And the joy of that. And so, I really, I feel more and more that there is a sort of those points of connecting, and what where I'm finding is that the internet and other sources, okay, there's problems, I get that, on the internet, but we're finding that people are coming to us who already have done a lot of looking and searching already, and we just have people walking in off the street, younger people, often men, not huge numbers, but just ones and twos, a steady stream are coming in, and often, you know, they've been looking at some of the questions in their own time and online, and then they want to see how it works.
Yeah.
And so we try to stress, well, it works in community. The local church is about creating that space that you can come in and experience learning about God with others. And so I suppose that's how I see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like, if you love your church, that's great. What an easy invite, you know, come and see how this works out. Come and see this community made up of a whole bunch of weird people who have no business gathering together, but love each other and care for each other and support each other and want to welcome you. I remember someone saying, look, you could, like, people might not respond to an invitation, people might not respond and say yes to church, but it's the failure, like the success of an invitation isn't the yes or no to it, but making the invitation. Like, the success of sharing your faith isn't the success of people saying yes or no, of kind of accepting Jesus or beginning to walk alongside him or coming to church. The success of sharing faith is the very act of sharing it, not the result, but instead the obedience to it, the kind of the responding to Jesus' love, the being overflowed by Jesus' love and just sharing it. The success is in the moment of sharing it, of the actual thing of saying, look, like, when my life has been hard, God has been there for me. That's the success, rather than the person's response, which is really kind of takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
I think it does. I really do.
You know, we're not kind of results driven. We don't need to get kind of 15 converts each before we die. That's not how this grace thing works. It's all about receiving and pouring out, and as we pour out, that's where the kind of success, in inverted commas, comes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Phil. We covered a lot there, from just doing what Jesus did and carrying it on, that Jesus goes with us, whatever we're doing in life. That it's about drawing alongside people and helping them parallel their lives with God, rather than just kind of tangenting to him, and just sharing where we are. Does this faith thing work? And sharing the moments where God has really turned up, God has really been faithful to us. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Phil. It's been a wonderful evening to chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is our last one. We'll probably have another set of live stream conversations later on in the year, but you can join us tomorrow evening at 7:30 in church for our Maundy Thursday service, or on Good Friday from 12 till 2 for a couple of hours at the cross, or on Easter Sunday, where we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, where we see that, yes, this stuff works, this stuff brings life. This faith is about life through death, about the defeat of the last enemy, about forgiveness of sin. So join us on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. as well. Thanks so much, Phil. It's been wonderful to chat to you. Thanks, everybody, for joining in, and hopefully see you sometime over this Easter weekend.